Hi, this is a preview of a presentation I'm developing and trying out, and I'd love to see how this lands with you via likes in the comments section. It's called What Goal Setting Behavior Reveals About Leadership. And here's the premise: how leaders set goals transmits a cultural signal. Let me tell you more. This is the format I've used. I'm going to take a look at how leaders use, set, and share goals and what that implies, how these behaviors land with employees, and you will see that actions do speak louder than words. And I'll also take a look at what good looks like. This really matters. I will move quickly, and I'd encourage you to look for patterns, start to codify what great looks like, start to reflect on what you could do better and how you could do it. Let's start with clarity and direction. A leader who sets vague goals, well, they've not done the thinking required to lead. People quickly learn that precision invites scrutiny, so ambiguity becomes the rational, self protective response. The underlying assumption that forms is being unclear is safer than placing your bets and being accountable. It's the culture that loses its ability to hold honest conversations about choices and performance. And what great looks like is this: you explain your choices, why the goal matters, the crux, which is the hard to do thing that must be overcome, and the measurable outcomes that are needed. You then make the communication so good, it guides decisions being made daily without anyone needing to ask. The next giveaway is similar, but this time the leader articulates the what, but not the why. So they are transmitting targets rather than building meaning. People learn that understanding purpose is not their role, it belongs to someone above them. The culture develops Agrilis' single loop behavior here, skilled at adjusting actions to hit targets, permanently closed to questioning, though, whether those targets are right. What great looks like is this: you build the why into every goal conversation, so meaning travels with the target, not just the metric. Next is a leader whose goals could apply to any organization in their sector. Well, they've not got a strategy. And what generic goals teach people is that the place they work is interchangeable. There's nothing distinct enough here to protect or care about. Obviously, the culture loses its identity. And with it, the collective motivation that comes from belonging to something worth being part of. What great looks like is this: leaders set strategic goals, specific enough that they could only belong to this company, team, target customer, this moment in time, and precise enough to resolve any real trade off, which is easier said than done, but yet it's a must. Next are leaders who set goals at only one altitude. They cannot hold direction and path simultaneously. People either become cynical about vision because it never lands in practice, or lose meaning in their daily work because it never connects to anything larger. The culture fractures. Aspiration and execution become two different organizations. What great looks like is this: they can hold both altitudes simultaneously. Knowing where teams are building towards over what are often many years, and what that means for everyone just next month. Now for cascade and translation, which is all about what happens to the goal as it descends through the organization. So let's start with leaders whose goals exist at the top but dissolve as they descend. This, of course, implies they believe their job ends at strategy. When it does end there and each part of the organization constructs its own interpretation of direction, what White describes as parallel diverging sense making, leadership is perpetually surprised by what is actually happening. What great looks like is this. They treat the goal cascade as active translation work, verifying at each level that strategic goals have arrived with their meaning and intent intact. And the work is being influenced at every level. New things are being picked up and others put down. Decision making made easier, work more enjoyable. So here's another good one: commitment and ownership. Let's start with a leader who hands goals downward without other people's involvement. This leader believes compliance and commitment are the same thing. So people learn that their input doesn't influence outcomes and stop offering it. The organization loses access to the distributed intelligence closest to the work. What a Grittis called skilled incompetence gradually fills the gap. People become expert at appearing to engage without genuinely doing so. And guess what? Great leaders co-create goals with their people. Not because consensus is the point, but because ownership is. And ownership requires genuine participation in the setting of the target. This is another interesting one: a leader whose team would feel relief if the goal disappeared tomorrow. In this instance, they have set an obligation, not a goal. Self-determination theory distinguishes autonomous from controlled motivation. The gap in sustained performance between them is substantial. When obligation becomes the norm, wrong priorities go unchallenged, and strategy becomes something that happens to people rather than something that they own. Great looks like a team that would feel genuine loss if the goal were removed, because it was chosen, not administered. That's the signal of real ownership. Next is the leader who assigns goals without asking what the person cares about. These leaders see motivation as a mechanism rather than needing meaning. This is an issue because goals disconnected from personal values produce controlled motivation at best. Effort that switches off the moment that external pressure lifts. So the culture that suppresses intrinsic motivation systematically will need to treat the consequences, which include low engagement and transactional effort. And what great looks like when you can connect the goals to what each person is genuinely motivated by is making the company, the teams, and individuals' purpose all the same thing. So the next one is very common and really disappointing: a leader that does not walk the talk with their own goals. Of course, they signal that goals don't really matter. Shin identified leaders' behaviors as the primary mechanism of cultural transmission. You would have seen this. People follow what leaders do, not what they say. When the gap is visible, the culture splits. People stop trusting stated direction and start reading the subtext. Two organizations emerge inside one. An obviously bad state and idea if you're in leadership, ironically. So the best leaders bring genuine commitment to goal setting excellence. They're modeling exemplar behaviors like working towards outcomes, making progress visible, sharing learnings from failures as well as successes, and of course, sometimes missing targets. So the team never has to guess what the leaders want if they are actually behind goal setting as a practice and as something that we want to be excellent at. Now for feedback and reality. So a leader whose feedback loop is a quarterly review cannot see when things are drifting. They're showing a preference for measuring the past rather than navigating the present. The issue is that delayed feedback loops are structurally destabilizing. The longer the lag, the further a system drifts before correction is possible. What happens is people learn to manage appearances between reviews rather than manage outcomes continuously. What much better looks like is a leader that knows on any given week whether they are closing the gap or widen it, because the feedback loop and reality requirement is built into how they operate. Teams are empowered, progress and confidence is there to see in real time, perhaps. Appropriate escalations are happening, adjustments are being made, and teams learn that there's more to progress than just progress. Right, here's a minefield for us: difficulty and stretch. So there are two sides to this coin. Let's start with leaders who consistently set easy goals. Well, they signal it's good to prioritize comfort over development. The goals leaders set signal what the organization believes is possible. Easy goals implicitly teach a fixed view of capability. This is an issue because high performers often leave because there is nothing to stretch them. The culture atrophies, the capability floor drops year on year, and the organization mistakes activity for genuine ambition. Good looks like this: you calibrate difficulty honestly, setting goals that require real stretch, yet remain achievable with genuine effort, all adjusted as the team learns and develops. So the edge moves as the capability does. Now, for the leader who sets impossibly ambitious goals without the strategy or support to match, and I know you've met them. They believe aspiration alone is leadership. The problem is obvious. Unrealistic goals without enablement drive risk taking and erode strategic credibility. People learn that this stated ambition is not serious and begin to discount everything that comes from the top. The culture develops a permanent gap between what is declared and what is believed. Good is obvious. Leaders have a clear strategy with explainable and rational targets that contain aspiration. So the org chart, as well as the goals, are resourced for success, and the odds of success are actually in favor of the goal, which feels like you're loading the dice. Now for revision and learning, which is about how leaders relate to imperfection and new information. So let's start with a leader who never revises a goal. Have you met them? To employees, this signals that they are either not paying attention to new information or they have confused commitment with rigidity. Agrilis identified this as a core organizational defensive routine, a collective protection against acknowledging that current approaches are failing. So the culture becomes kind of impervious to the evidence it most needs and continues pursuing goals the information has already undermined. Of course, great looks like this: leaders who hold goals with commitment flexibility, that are persistent enough to push through difficulty, but clear eyed enough to revise when the information genuinely changes, treating revision as intelligence, not a sign of retreat. I've definitely met lots of these people. Have you? A leader who treats a missed goal as a performance failure rather than learning is next. Well, this discourages risk, ambition, experimentation, the use of measurable outcomes, and so much more of the good stuff that you need, I need. So when failure is evidence rather than data, people learn to avoid it. Setting easy goals or explaining misses rather than examining them. The learning loop breaks at precisely the moment it has most to offer, and the organization repeats the same expensive mistakes. Better is so much better. Leaders who can name specifically what a missed goal revealed about the goal, the strategy, or themselves. So, getting better at goal setting with every cycle happens because the feedback is genuinely being used. Now, for the leaders whose people cannot name a goal they didn't reach, what they're doing is creating low psychological safety around failure, probably without knowing it. Amy Edmondson's research shows that this predicts silence, not safety. The people most likely to improve the organization, those honest about what isn't working, leave or disengage. The culture selects for people comfortable with managing reality over true performance. And good looks like, in this instance, a team that speaks openly about what didn't work, where falling short is treated as information, not evidence of inadequacy. Honest about imperfection, serious about learning from it is where we want to be. Last one, priority and subtraction. I think most will know these leaders as well. The leader who can only add goals and never subtract them. Do you know them? What this signals is that they lack the courage to prioritize or they don't mind overloading the system. The issues are obvious. Attention and energy are obviously finite. Organizations that only add priorities violate the basic physics of human capacity. People learn to do everything partially and nothing excellently. The cultural belief that forms more is always expected, completion is never possible, and I am permanently failing regardless of effort. What good looks like and what good is what every organization needs. Leaders who can say no to good things in service of the right things, whose team never wonders what actually matters because the priorities are visible, real, and defended. So let's wrap this up. Goals and the ability to set them are fundamental to human and organizational development. The trick with goal setting is to ensure you set and communicate goals well enough to influence behavior, develop culture, and deliver results. For most, this is not true because it's a skill that's not been taught, coached, and mastered. Leaders describe symptoms all the time, though. So they things like misalignment, poor collaboration, slow progress, no urgency, low growth, having Me Too offerings. But what they don't realize is how well you set goals and the culture around that solves all of those. So, this presentation, I hope, is the beginning of a journey for you. If it's a journey you want to take your whole organization on and you'd like to get there faster, contact me because goal setting is a superpower. What did you think? Hopefully, it was useful to you. If it was, some clear signal would be some comments and the like. And yeah, that will be the encouragement I need to keep developing that presentation. I certainly enjoyed giving it. So let me know what you think.